Dzień dobry, nazywam się Tomasz Walczak i witam Państwa w specjalnym wydaniu raportu Walczaka. Specjalnym, bo i gość specjalny dzisiaj jest z nami. Jest z nami pan ambasador Mark Brzeziński, ambasador Stanów Zjednoczonych w Polsce. Hello, Mr. Ambassador, and thank you for joining us.
Tomasz, thank you for having me here. Dziękuję za zaproszenie.
It's always great to have you here, and especially right now, because we're expecting Mr. President Joe Biden coming to Poland next week. And I wonder what kind of political message should we expect from him?
This is a historic moment, Tomasz. Never before has a U.S. president come to Poland on an official visit 2 times within 1 single year. And that, because it's happening, shows the elevation, the ascension of the American-Polish special friendship. So it is a historic time, and I'll say it even in Polish, to jest historyczny moment. Nigdy wcześniej prezydent USA nie był w Polsce 2 razy w ciągu 1 roku. So that is an important point, and it says something about what is happening. I just think about the morning I just had today. Today, I started in the presidential palace planning for the U.S. president visit to meet with President Duda and to meet with all of Poland. In the afternoon, am greeting at Chopin Airport a big group of members of Congress coming to Poland. In the evening, we're doing a big dinner with the Minister of Defense over security. The engagement between our 2 countries is intensive, and the meshing together of our various self-interests are remarkable. It is a special time in the American-Polish relationship, and I'm just so unbelievably honored personally to serve as U.S. Ambassador to Poland at this time. I lived in Poland 30 years ago. Poland underwent so much change, painful change, and I want to say that we see that. The Polish people did a heavy lift over the last 30 years, and your success is a tribute to your hard work. And now we stand together at this moment, the Americans and Poles, shoulder to shoulder in collective security for each other and doing what we can for the people of Ukraine. It's a remarkable moment in the American-Polish relationship.
So let me ask you some tricky question here.
Yeah.
This great bilateral relations between Poland and the United States, of course, it's because of war. And when I follow American media, they are very happy to announce that Poland has rose to a position to be one of the leaders in Europe. Is it because they're happy that finally some country in Europe took responsibility for what's happening in Europe? Because I remember many politicians in the United States, many pundits complaining that Europe is not taking responsibility for its security. So here we are in Poland. Poland is kind of country you are looking for as America in Europe.
Tomasz, the closeness in the relationship, of course, is because of the crisis, but it's also because of so much more. First of all, in terms of the military-to-military collaboration, it's never been closer. There's over 10,000 U.S. soldiers in Poland right now, spread out all across the country, looking east, shoulder to shoulder with Polish soldiers to help keep NATO secure. The Poles are doing a remarkable job in supporting Ukrainian refugees and supporting the people of Ukraine in Ukraine, supplying food, supplying resources for the Ukrainian people to be able to sustain themselves under a horrific set of bombardments and attacks by Russia. It's also because of the business-to-business relationship. The Polish economy continues to flourish despite the fact that it's on the border of a war zone. And we, the Americans, are there with the Poles to continue that narrative. American businesses know that Polish people are bardzo pracowity, very hardworking, and such loyal collaborators and colleagues on a workforce, and want to invest in the Polish market. And we're seeing that continue, which I think is another important dimension of the American-Polish special friendship. And we're each working on our democracies. Every democracy needs tending. Every democracy needs to be cultivated continuously. That is something that President Biden has spoken about a lot. And so I'm so thrilled about this visit because it'll offer our top leaders, Polish leaders and American leaders, to meet. But I also want to say that something very special will happen during the visit. And I'll say this to your viewers. There will be a large public event with President Biden in Warsaw. The location is still to be determined, but we're inviting Poles from across Poland to come and see in person our president. In Warsaw, in public, our president will deliver a major speech, and like last year's speech, it will be focused on this region's security, on this region's democracy, on this region's people, and the humanitarian lift that the Polish people are underway with right now.
Timing is very important here with President Biden visit. It's a few days to first anniversary of war in Ukraine.
Right.
And
it's very significant.
And Mr. President will be delivering his speech in Poland at the same time as Vladimir Putin in Moscow in Federal Council. This will be kind of political contest between them, and Joe Biden wants to show Vladimir Putin that we are here, we're not moving anywhere, and we're gonna fight as hard as we can to help Ukraine to win this war.
Well, compare these two people who you just mentioned. President Joe Biden, who has kept an alliance of dozens of countries, of democracies, together in a meshing together for collective defense to make sure that the Ukraine crisis doesn't expand and to support the beleaguered and pain, filled with pain people of Ukraine. And President Biden's love for people and his empathy for people is pretty unchallengeable. I think you saw that on the streets of Warsaw and at the National Stadium last March. His hugging of the refugees and his empathy for the people. President Joe Biden is the president of the people. And then there's Putin, who undertook an attack on Ukraine. Did he do that to push Sweden and Finland into NATO? Probably not. Did he do that to push the Americans and Polish governments closer together? Probably not. Did he do this to see a rearming in Europe and a defense of Europe, unlike what one has seen since the Cold War? Probably not. It's been a strategic failure in every possible way for the Russian people. And on top of that, he's killing Ukrainians left and right. How is that something to be proud of? How's that success? Is that something reportable to the Russian people? I'm not worried about who will get more focus on that particular day.
Yeah, Warsaw will be, of course, center of all that next week. And also, I follow those comments that the center of gravity in Europe, in NATO especially, European part of NATO, has moved to the east because of the war. Is that so? Is that really what happened last year?
Well, we have a crisis in Central Europe, and NATO is about collective defense, and it's working. The fact is that this region is safe and secure. And I think it's very important that President Duda and the leader of Slovakia will co-host the Bucharest 9 summit during President Biden's visit to Warsaw, so that there can be a collective dialogue on what it will take to make this region continue to be safe and secure. It's important to remember, though, that the Ukraine crisis is not just a Polish problem or an American problem or a Central European problem. This is an international crisis, and it will be really important for others to share in and join in providing resources to help the Ukrainian people win their war against Russia and to help the Ukrainian people build back better. And that will be a global approach taken to this challenge. And we're at the very beginnings of this right now. We still have to win the war. Tragically, any opportunity for diplomacy is destroyed by Putin's continuing, including the latest attacks, barrage after barrage by the Russians on the poor, beleaguered Ukrainian people, hospitals attacked, schools attacked. The atrocities committed by Russian soldiers in some of the Ukrainian cities are reminiscent of World War II. It's disgraceful.
Speaking of delivering materials, weapons, ammunition, help to Ukraine, America tired of this tedious political deliberation about helping Ukraine? We've seen the whole year we've been bouncing back and forth, trying to deliver as much as we can to Ukraine. We've seen this deliberation about tanks at the beginning of the year, and everyone was tired. In Poland, everyone was frustrated with this. Is America frustrated how long it takes to deliver this help?
Tomasz, Americans understand what's at stake here. I mean, what is at stake here is literally the outcome of a collision between dictatorship and autocracy on the one hand and democracy on the other. We do not want to leave for our children a world where it's okay for big and strong states to bully little states. That is the essence of what is at stake. Tactically, our support for Ukraine has taken different forms as the Russians have changed their tactics. And, at first, the supply in terms of, what it takes for the Ukrainians to defend themselves took the form of things like javelins. And then to protect against the barrages coming into Ukrainian cities, HIMARS were given to the Ukrainians. Now, thanks to Russian tactics, tanks are being focused on. And I think we will continue, I will tell you, we will continue to support the Ukrainian people for as long as it takes. As Secretary Blinken put it, if Russia loses the war, they go back to the geopolitical boundaries of Russia. If Ukraine loses the war, there's no more Ukraine. That's a paraphrase of his quote, but I think that's the essence of what he wanted to say.
Now, when we look at allies and their approach to this war and to help Ukraine, are we all on the same page? Because I don't want to point fingers here, sure. But there are countries who seem to don't understand the gravity of all this happening in Ukraine.
Well, I think countries differ. People with principle can differ, and there are differing self-interests at play. And I'm proud to work for a president that has pulled together a really large alliance of countries with really differing, as well as similar, but also differing self-interests, and pulled together a collective approach that truly, on this anniversary of the crisis, on February 24th, or even as we speak right now, there is in the alliance a unity of purpose, one, and a shared definition of the threat. And that is not an easy thing to catalyze, but our president has done that. And that's why President Duda's hosting of My President next week, and President Duda's hosting, along with the Slovak leader, of the Bucharest Nine, is so unbelievably important, because this region stands, first of all, as a front line to a crisis that is working because collective defense is working, and then second, it is taking care of the most vulnerable victims imaginable, and that's the Ukrainian people who have left their homes and shelters with nowhere to go. I have talked with many Ukrainian refugees who are on the streets of Warsaw, who have no clear idea of where they would go, no clear idea of how they are going to pay for things. And as a national policy, the people of Poland have opened their doors and opened their hearts. We, the Americans, see that, and we say to the people of Poland, dziękuję. This is your moment, and the president's visit next week is all about you and celebrating you and saying what an amazing thing you've done. You, Polish people, you have inspired us. You have set the bar at a new height, and we're proud of you. Jestem z ciebie dumny.
And what's your assessment? What's the role of Poland with creating the debate over help to Ukraine? How important Polish voice was in this?
It was incredibly important. Because in this moment, there are over 1 million Ukrainians registered with the government of Poland who live in Poland, mostly in someone's home or someone's apartment. And I don't know where they would be if the Poles had not done that. I can tell you that as ambassador, I lived in Sweden for 4 years. Sweden is rightfully proud that it has taken in over 1 million refugees over 20 years. Poland, since February 24th, has taken in millions of refugees in less than a year. The amount of capacity the Poles took in the short amount of time is unbelievable. And frankly, it is a testament of the Polish people's ability to engage in mass and rapid mobilization. And it's not dissimilar from the Warsaw Uprising or what it took during the Solidarity period to topple the communist regime. A mass mobilization of the Polish people. As an American, I compare it to what Americans did when Pearl Harbor was attacked or during the race to the moon, when we needed a mass mobilization to achieve a result. The Polish people did this past year, and we, the Americans, see that, and we thank you for it.
What kind of challenges America sees with helping Ukraine? We see Ukrainian government asking for ammunition because they're running out of ammunition.
Sure.
They're using a lot of them, incredible amounts of artillery rounds, and we see the problems with defense industries across Europe and also in America to deliver as much as Ukraine needs and as much as allies need to protect themselves. This is the major challenge right now, because when I listen to experts, they point to this and say, okay, we should absolutely do something about it.
Well, your question is probably the most fundamental question as it pertains to government, because at bottom, at its most fundamental, a government's obligation is to keep its people safe and secure over practically anything else. And so in the case of Poland, I feel that there is a meshing together with NATO and the American military that should give people confidence that we are waiting and watching closely what's happening to make sure NATO remains secure, and we're confident that NATO and Poland is secure. We are also supplying the Ukrainian people in order to be able to defend themselves. That's important to emphasize. We don't seek any expanded conflict, but we want a beleaguered, oppressed people who are being killed in mass numbers to be able to defend themselves. Anyone in this century would want that. In the 21st century, after horrific genocides and the Holocaust of the past, would want to see the genocide underway now stopped. So we're providing that supply of resources, but also the training. You know, this is, you know, warfare in its modern form has sophisticated articles of defense, and that requires training. And so we're working with others to provide that as appropriate, so that people are able to defend their homes and their families from an attack or from abroad. What's wrong with that?
And to sum up this, in your opinion, what's the major lesson we've learned as the West from this conflict?
That we misread Putin tragically, and his respect for his neighbors. And the fact is that Russia would be better off if its neighbors feared it less, and they don't. The Russian people would be better off if Russia's neighbors feared it less. And yet we find ourselves in a situation where the Russian president, Putin, opportunistically attacked a weaker neighbor. And as we, in the near term, support the Ukrainian people, the most near-term lesson is we will do what it takes for the Ukrainian people to win and to be able to protect themselves. And in the long term, we will collaborate with the Ukrainian people so that they can build back better, be more resilient and stronger in the future.
And in a few days, there will be also an anniversary, but of you assuming duty of U.S. ambassador to Poland. And what year it was to you? I guess this was a different Poland that you imagined you were coming, and suddenly you turn out to be in the country being on the front lines of this huge conflict. How do you assess this year for you?
Well, Tomasz, you know, my role here in Poland is a labor of love. Kocham Polską. I to jest najważniejszy moment. To jest, jak mówiłem, historyczny moment. I wizyt prezydent Biden to jest dla nas ogromny zaszczyt. But from the very beginning of this year, I have tried to be as proactive, as open, as positively engaged with every corner of this country, with every community of this society, and to undertake the various questions pertinent to the American-Polish relationship. And so while it's been a hard year, and we've had so many visitors, we've had in the past year, the US president, the vice president, the secretary of state 3 times, secretary of defense 3 times, over 120 members of Congress. We've had literally thousands of official visitors here. In the last year, I've done everything I can to also get out of Warsaw, get out of the capital, into Poland, to get out to Białystok, to Poznan, to Wrocław, to Szczecin, to Przemyśl and so forth, and to meet people, and also on behalf of the American president, say, dziękuję, jestem z ciebie dumny, thank you, we're so proud of you, because I think the Polish people really, really deserve to hear that.
Mr. Ambassador, and very last question here. Last year we were worrying about how NATO is secure from Russia. There were fears that Putin would act like a maniac. A year from that point, can we say we feel safer than the previous year?
Well, you have to remember that President Biden made the decision before February 24th of this year, months before February 24th of this year, to share classified intelligence with the leadership of the Baltic states, Poland, and other frontline countries to Ukraine. And that classified information articulated what are the offensive and defensive structures of the Russian military, and what do the Russian political leadership intend to do with it vis-a-vis Ukraine. And so over a period of months, we were able to consult and engage with our with our allies in this part of the world to develop a shared understanding of what was coming down the pike, and then second, what we need to do to prepare for this. And so we had a scientific understanding of the border crossings between Poland and Ukraine. So on February 24th, we and the Polish government were ready. And we had a synchronicity in terms of our security, political, and military establishments so that we could communicate easily and quickly. And the proof of that was in the Przewodów incident in early November, when 2 Polish citizens were killed in eastern Poland by an errant missile. We had actually gamed out scenarios between the embassy and the Polish government that could happen, and what is it that we would do if it did. And what did happen was that our respective leaderships came together immediately at the presidential level, President Biden and President Duda, but also national security advisors, ministers of defense, ministers of foreign affairs, and we were able to develop a shared understanding of what had happened in Przewodów, first. Second, a shared communication to our respective people, describing what had happened. And third, a shared approach to how we engage in NATO the following day regarding what had happened. That's the kind of discipline that someone like Putin would hate to see. And we were ready on it, and we're ready now.
Okay, Mr. Ambassador, thank you for being with us. It's always great to have you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure. Proszę Państwa, moim Państwa gościem był Mark Brzeziński, ambasador Stanów Zjednoczonych w Polsce. Żegnamy się już z Panem Ambasadorem, żegnam się z Państwem i do zobaczenia wkrótce.